As everyone said, my name is Cheryl Watson, and I have been working in victim services now for 25 years. I'm very, very fortunate to be at the Essex District Attorney's Office, and I want to apologize for the District Attorney, Jonathan Blodgett. He was unable to be with you today, but he asked me to speak at this event, and I'm very honored to do that. I want to thank Pam Freeman for all of her support and her work on our WIN Domestic Violence Roundtable. She's an amazing member of that group, and we, as a group, get together and talk about domestic violence issues of all kinds and have presentations. We've had some very, very rich discussions. Thank you, Pam, for that and for organizing this amazing breakfast. Congratulations for 10 years. I also, as you heard, I'm also the co-chair of a number of our domestic violence roundtables and high-risk teams across the county, in Essex County, and we do have several members of the roundtable and the high-risk team present here today. And so I know that I'm speaking to a lot of people who really understand what I'm going to be talking about. But I think that it's important for us, and when we talk about domestic violence, that we recognize some issues. The District Attorney's Office obviously is charged with prosecuting criminal cases. We actually prosecute over 40,000 cases a year in the Essex District Attorney's Office. There are 11 district attorneys across the state, and I would say that our office generally runs third or fourth in the number of cases prosecuted throughout the state. We have a number of prevention programs that the District Attorney's Office is, the District Attorney Blodgett is very, very passionate about. You've probably heard him talk about social host liability, and we've seen his programs. We've done anti-bullying conferences, and we just did some teen dating violence prevention work and did a video, and have done some work around grandparents and elder abuse. But I think that the work that certainly I'm the most proud of is the work that we've done with domestic violence cases. When I look back at when I started 25 years ago in victim services, the victim rights law was really in its infancy. And there is a law in the state, there's actually a law in every state in the country now, that provides victims and witnesses with certain rights. And the victim advocates in the District Attorney's Office is there to help victims and witnesses to gain access and to have a voice in the system. Many people who come through the system don't feel like they have a voice. And Crystal Jackson from DCF was at a conference yesterday that I was at, where a victim spoke very eloquently about her experiences within the criminal justice system, where she really felt that she had received no justice. And many people come through the system and feel that way. But as an advocate for victims for 25 years, I feel that to have somebody within the system, particularly with domestic violence cases, is just so essential, because oftentimes, as Dr. McLean said, you know, we turn to our community, we turn to our family and our friends, and many domestic violence victims cannot turn to their friends and family because they have been isolated by their abuser. And so they are not able to turn to their family and friends, and sometimes do not have access to the community because they've been isolated. They've also, as Dr. Reed talked about, many of the women and children that we see who come through the system, the relationship they're in is all that they know. The abuse that they've experienced is generational, and it is all that they know. And so they think that it's normal. And as Dr. Reed said, I don't know if it's true that you were in a relationship with your wife for 30 years, but when victims of domestic violence come into the system, they have been abused and threatened many, many times before they reach us in the court system. And when they do come into the system, they are pretty broken and pretty afraid, because oftentimes the secrets that they've held within their family are now exposed to the newspaper, to the community, to family or friends, where it hadn't been known before. And it's now exposed. And so they come to us, and unfortunately, a lot of the domestic violence victims that we see initially in the court system do not want to participate. And so many times people look at victims, it's so easy for us to judge each other. And it's so difficult to really think about the intricacies of why people stay in a relationship. And I know that many of you know the reasons, and even people working within the system know and understand the reasons why people stay in a relationship. However, we seem to lose sight of that when people come into the system. And when you see people coming into the system over and over again, as I'm sure all of the DCF people here can tell you, we see the same people coming into the system over and over again. And we think, my goodness, why does she stay with him? Why is she abused? Maybe some of you could just, tell me, why does a domestic violence victim stay in an abusive relationship? Financial. Fear that it will get worse. Fear that they will be in more danger.
I was in school before.
Excuse me? My kids. Your kids. Children, it's so amazing that so many people stay in those relationships with their children. And it's very understandable because it's very difficult and it's so scary to think about leaving a relationship and having to take care of your children by yourself. And how are you going to afford to feed them, pay the bills, raise the children, do all of the things that a single parent has to do? That is just so fearful. Anyone else?
Immigration status. Immigration status.
Immigration status is huge. We see many women who are afraid to come into the system, especially because they're afraid that they'll be deported or that they will not be able to go further with their immigration process. There is actually a law that, the federal law that helps women to go through the process without their husband as a sponsor. And we do help victims with that. But there are so many reasons. And love is an amazing reason why people stay together. Initially, when a victim and their abuser get together, there's a lot of romance and there's a lot of love there and a lot of reasons why someone gets together with their spouse originally or their partner. And so the abuse does it. We don't see abuse that occurs often at the very beginning of a relationship. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we'll see abuse that happens right away. But the abuse that we see escalates, and it gets worse and worse. And that's really when we see victims come into the system. When the abuse has gotten so bad that the police have been called, there are physical injuries and worse homicide cases. Domestic violence cases are some of our most difficult cases because we really want to work with victims to ensure that they feel comfortable if they're not willing to participate in the criminal justice system at this time. We want to make sure that they know that they can come back to us, that the door is always open, and that they can come back to us. And when they're ready to proceed, that we'll be there, or someone will be there. So it's really very important for people within the criminal justice system to have that open mind, to allow victims to come back into the system. It just seems to really defy logic, why someone would stay in a relationship so long, and yet people do. People do stay in those relationships for a long time. And the children, we see many children that are tagging along with their parents who come into court, And the probation department did a study approximately 15 years ago. They did a study, and they looked at restraining orders across the state, and they found that over 30,000 children witnessed domestic violence in their homes. Unfortunately, they haven't done a more recent study, but over 30,000 children witnessed domestic violence in their homes. And I can tell you that just in Essex County alone, we received over 1,000 referrals from the Department of Children and Families, approximately 1,000 referrals from the Department of Children and Families for child abuse, whether it's physical or sexual abuse. So children are involved because many of the children who are abused there's domestic violence. We're seeing again those generational issues. And in 2010, in Essex County alone, 4,753 restraining orders were issued in 2010. That's up from the previous year, 2009, where there were 3,812 restraining orders. So is domestic abuse up, or are people just, accessing restraining orders more? I'm not really sure, but that's quite a significant number just within the county alone. Working in a prosecutor's office, we feel that we have a responsibility to protect the people of the Commonwealth, and victims are members of our community, and we want to protect them. But so often we look to domestic violence victims to guide us with what is really in their best interest. It is rare that we will make a domestic violence victim go forward in a case where they don't want to testify. And the victim is really the primary witness in the case, because most often the abuse occurs within the context of the home behind closed doors. It doesn't happen in the open with witnesses. And so we really need victims to be able to go forward and testify. And without the victim, many times we cannot go forward unless there are other witnesses that can testify in the case. And